My name is Rob Thomas. I'd like to start off by giving a little bit of background as to who is in the webinar. We should have today in the webinar business owners, managers, people with business development responsibility. We should also have sales staff, sales managers, vice presidents and directors of sales. So a full range of people who've been invited along by other consultants. We will also have, I guess, a broad range of experience of people using LinkedIn, from newbies to power users. So people who've only just started on LinkedIn, right through to people who've been quite experienced with it and maybe on it a number of years. So I'm hoping that no matter what range you're in, you're going to get some really good juicy nuggets out of today's webinar. We also have people from North America, South America, South Africa, and here in the UK. So there might be slightly different spelling on some of the slides, and that's to accommodate everybody. And if I mention different currencies like dollars and pounds, if it's not your local currency, don't worry. The principles of what we're talking about work in every country that social selling is starting to build in. We have a 12-week instructor-led master program that you may well be interested in, and we'll come back to that towards the end of the webinar. Some of you may have just heard about the webinar and registered and not know anything about the mastery program. So it does make sense that I cover that, but hopefully you've come with an open mind as to finding out what social selling is and how it might help you in your business. And I guess the common factor for most people is that they would like to improve their sales performance. So here's the structure for the webinar itself. I'm going to briefly outline what the social selling mastery program is, what it contains, how we deliver it, and then I'm going to give you a taster, 3 very detailed tips that you can use straight away in your business. And we're going to give you some hard evidence that this stuff works. It's not a fad, and if you apply it in a structured way, the benefits you're likely to get from it. And then we'll finish off the webinar at the end of the hour with next steps. What to do if you want to learn more. So if you're keen not just to have some fun learning a few hints and tips, but change your behaviors and have a permanent impact on your sales performance, then you can find out how to do that through the 12-week program. So let's have a quick recap of who WSI is and what we do in case you're not aware. WSI has been around since the mid to late 90s, and it's a global leader in digital marketing. We would like to think, yes, we have global knowledge and global reach. So we're a thought leadership organization that help our clients build their sales capability and their operational capability year in, year out. And we've recently published a book that you may have come across as well. And we're going to share this webinar in a recorded format with you after the event. And if you then just follow that link that takes you off to Digital Minds, you'll be able to either buy the book, or actually right now on Amazon, there's a free download if you're going to use it on your Kindle. Let's get into the most important part of this webinar, which is giving you some practical hints and tips, things that you can implement straight away. And I guarantee that this will drive more business into your company within a couple of weeks of you implementing them. So let's jump right in. And here's the main challenge that we're finding. We're finding that your buyers, your customers, they're always busy. And what they're doing is they're just focusing on the priorities right in front of them. And often if you don't have a structured approach to achieving your sales goals, these guys jump from one task to another. So if you just fire emails out to prospects or clients in the belief that this will generate interest, well, we're probably fooling ourselves. Because what we find is that the average employee deletes 48% of all their emails without even reading them. And the decision maker probably deletes more than that. Okay, so to recap, if you're just trying to blast out emails to prospects, well, 40% of them are probably deleted, if not more. While many businesses try and connect with prospective clients over the phone, cold calling doesn't really work anymore. Put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. They're not listening to random calls that aren't necessarily on their priorities at the moment that they come in. That's not to say you shouldn't be talking to your prospects on the phone, but there has to be a better way to create at least a warm call or even better still, incoming inquiries. After all, those are the best type of telephone conversations, right? Here's the core challenge, and you may have read the book, The Challenger Sale. The Challenger Sale did a study from the CEB, and they found that 60% of the buying journey is done without you or without me. In other words, they are doing research online themselves, and at least 57%, nearly 60% of that journey is done without talking to a salesperson or anyone with a sales responsibility. The big problem is that the average salesperson, and as we go through this, we're going to find out that we've trained thousands of salespeople over the last couple of years, or people at least with business development responsibility, sometimes the business owner. Here's the core thing that we find each time we talk to them. In a week, if you're not careful, all those prospects you've spoken to who say they're going to come back to you and give you an answer, well, they just don't, because they're so busy doing other things. Even though they may have promised they'll get back to you in a week or two, 4 or 6 weeks down the road, you're still calling them, you're still sending them emails, asking them the question, come on guys, are you ready to move forward? You have to ask yourself in that situation, are you a pest or are you an influencer? And we call this period between perhaps giving a proposal or having that conversation with a prospect where they've said they'll get back to you, we call this period the dead zone. So how do we overcome that dead zone? Because during that period, don't forget, your customers and your prospects have access to the same technology that you do. They're constantly researching, consuming content online, just like you. They're going to use their smartphone, their PC, their laptop, their tablet, and they're using tools like LinkedIn, Google, and elsewhere. So between when you first spoke and when you're hoping that you're going to get an answer, they're probably doing a lot of research online, and a lot of that research is going to be with your competitors. Whether you like it or not, the buyers are choosing the most convenient suppliers, the ones that are filling their dead zone. Your buyers are doing their due diligence, as we call it, online with or without you. They're listening to blogs, ebooks, webinars of your competitors. They're checking out the content to arm themselves with enough information to make the right decision. If they're the business owner, that's very important. If they're somebody lower down an organization, let's say the sales director, you know, their butt is on the line if they get this decision wrong. And that's why they're doing so much due diligence. Forrester Research backs this up. 65% of deals are awarded to the person or the team that are first to add value. So it's not necessarily the first ones that contact them, although that does have a big impact on share of voice. More importantly, it's the ones that are seen to add value. And that's why one of the tips we're going to show you right up front is how to monitor job change alerts. Why? Because when somebody is new to a role, often they have less than 90 days to prove themselves. There's no better time to help them with their challenges than to challenge their status quo and the status quo of the company they've just joined, and be the person that's providing them with the solutions to the problems. We need to get in front of those people early and influence the way they think. Now, when you do connect, they're going to look at your profile. They're going to look at your profile on LinkedIn. And if your profile looks like either of these two guys, then I think we've got some issues. Here are the two most common profiles that I see typically. The first one is what we might call the quota crusher, a person that's 130% of plan. Maybe he's made president's or top salesperson's club, if there is such a thing, in the last 3 years. Their profile says that they look after a particular geography or territory, and they're the greatest salesperson of all time. They've almost writing their profile as if it's their CV to get their next job. But I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker, of the potential buyer. So if you're a VP or a director of IT or a CFO, if you read their profile, how is that going to add value to your decision-making process when you're going through that due diligence? They probably don't even want to talk to that guy because they don't want to talk to a salesperson. But the person on the right is perhaps even more deadly. They don't even have a photo on their profile. They're just a gray shadow. And there's a lack of content or focus on their profile, which means they're pretty much invisible. Why would anyone want to do business with that person? Okay, yes, there's no evidence that they're bad, that they don't do a good job, but equally there's no evidence that they're good either. So the buyer might just do more research and maybe research a competitor where there is evidence, and that due diligence will mean they're going to choose somebody else. Due diligence, it's called that for a reason, right? Let's get into the meat of this. What are the 3 tips to running with social selling that I'm going to explore with you now? And then at the end, we're going to talk about what the next steps are and where you might go from there. First tip, master job change alerts. Here's tip number 1. We already talked about it. The easiest way to get in the door is through job change alerts. And this is what I want you to overcome, the problem of just having one connection. I'll give you an example. We built the worldwide curriculum for Oracle. It's one of the best case studies of social selling on the planet. However, for a long time, we only really had one contact within that organization. We call that single-threaded. It means you only have one relationship inside the company. But the average employee changes jobs 11 times during their career now. And right now, it's on average every 3 years that they move. Think about some of your named accounts. Think about some of your existing clients or your prospects. Think about what the risk is if you are only connected to one person in that organization and they leave. When you connect to a prospect, it's best to start at the top if you can, but then by connecting with his or her peers and those people inside the organization that might influence their decisions, that's called socially surrounding your decision makers by going both broad and deep. So if you only have one person in your network, I want you to learn how to build that internal network to turn what could be a threat into a more likely opportunity. What we're going to have a look at is how you can target those people using saved searches. And LinkedIn gives you 3 saved searches for free. We're going to have a look at advocate marketing. That's listening to your customers who are leaving and going to new companies, which is both a threat and an opportunity. Looking at leaders appointed to your hot accounts. So these aren't your clients, these are prospects, but you want to know when a decision maker joins that prospect because that's a really great opportunity to get in at the right time. And then we're going to have a look at ways you can save searches that are being opportunistic, either in relation to your territory or in relation to the type of decision maker you want to do business with. So let's look at the first of those, advocate marketing. We're going to start having a look at what a typical salesperson does. First of all, you will know that it costs 6 times less to sell to an existing client than it does to sell to a new prospect. So why don't we take our existing client base and find out if anybody is going to leave that existing client base? So we need to put up a search that alerts us to that fact. So here's what we're going to do in real time. I'm just going to escape out of the presentation, open up LinkedIn. And as soon as I get into LinkedIn, it takes me to the home page. We're going to move over here to the advanced search, which is just to the right of that search logo. So we're going to click on advanced search, and I'm going to have a look at 2 or 3 of my clients. So if I click on people, so I'm now looking at a people search. What I'm going to do here is in the company, I'm going to look for people who are with Lloyd's or TSB, or let's put Oracle in there as well. Okay. But here's the thing, I'm going to select past, not current. So that means they used to work for these companies, but they don't right now. Okay? And I'm going to scroll down and click search. And that will come up with a number. So that's 2,000 people who are in my first and second degree connections, or indeed in groups that I'm in, who used to work for those companies but no longer do. But to be honest, that's too broad. I want to refine that down to the job role of the decision maker I want to do business with. So I'm going to say here, okay, managers, they're good influencers, or directors, or another title that's used often is VP or Vice President. I'm going to put brackets around that because I want to refine it still further. So beyond that, I want to have a look at if they are managers, directors or VPs, but covering information technology or information services. So that's refining the search down still further. So if I click search now, that'll refine that down to a smaller number, 1,677. Okay, so that's a snapshot right now of people who used to work for those companies, who are manager, director, or VP, and looking after technology, services, or information technology. Okay, what I want to do now is save that search. So I pressed on save. Now I'm up to my maximum number of searches, so I'm just going to get rid of a couple of these. So now I can call this something. So I'm going to have people leaving my clients. Let's call it that. I'm going to check the box and save that. But you'll notice there that I've set an alert for weekly. So what will happen is once a week, I will get an email into my inbox that tells me in the last 7 days who in those job roles have just left those companies. Now that's both a great opportunity because I will make contact with them in the companies they're going to, because clearly they've got 90 days to prove themselves there. But I also need to touch base with that group of influencers and peers that I have gone broad and deep back in those companies to make sure that we don't lose the relationship and make sure that we can help the new leader who's taking over come up to speed quickly. Appointed leaders is one of the second ones we talked about, and there it's the same search, but instead of saying past not current, we change that to current. Everything else stays the same. If I put saved search and then I put new appointed leaders to Lloyd's, TSB or Oracle, and if I save that, then what happens each week, I will get an alert that tells me when somebody new in those positions have joined that company. That's fantastic for me. Absolutely brilliant. So here's the presentation. So we've just talked about advocate marketing. We've also talked about appointed leaders. And the last one here is about being opportunistic. Now the same searches, instead of using titles, we can use locations and titles. So forget about the companies they're in. If I'm just looking to connect with new organizations who have appointed a new sales director, for example, I would simply put title, sales director, location within a 25-mile radius of where I live or something like that, save that, and likewise I would get a weekly update of anyone new as a decision maker in those organizations. So that's absolutely fantastic, and this is what it looks like in terms of a weekly update on new job alerts. So that's tip number one, trigger alerts that allow you to connect with people at the right place at the right time. And to me, that's been perhaps one of the marketing Eldorados that it's taken us a long time to get to, but LinkedIn gives us the power to do that. So let's move quickly on to tip number two. We talked about the easiest way to get in is through the job change alert. Well, I'm going to show you another tip here where you can then start to communicate with people for free without necessarily connecting with them, because there's a lot of connecting that goes on that's random, and you don't really need to connect to people to communicate with them. So the average LinkedIn user, here's what they do. They would blindly connect, praying that that person would add them back so that they would have the ability to message them. Or if you're a premium user, you might use InMail, but not anymore. Here's what you do. Let's go off here. Let's take this guy, Brendan Cassidy. Okay, so let's go back over here and let's search for this guy. Go into people search. You can see Brendan Cassidy is a second degree, so we are not connected. On the right-hand side, you will see further down here, you have the ability to see what we have in common with Brendan. So we have 5 skills and experience, but also here we are members of 3 groups. One of those groups is called On Startups. So if I scroll down his profile towards the bottom, what we will see is On Startups, we are both members of. There's a tick there. So if I click On Startups, what we will do is go through to that group, then click on Members. I'm in the On Startups group. I click on Members. I will then search for Brendan Cassidy, because we know he is a member for that. So there's Brendan Cassidy. He's a second degree connection. But you'll see here it says Send Message. If I click on there, Send Message, I can send Brendan a direct message. I don't know his email address. I'm not connected to him, but I can contact him directly. And here's what we know. Emails delivered via LinkedIn with the LinkedIn logo on there have a 7-to-1 read and response rate over traditional email. So even if you knew his email address, using this method is far more effective at connecting to Brendan, getting his attention, and him responding. Messaging people for free, that is fantastic. And indeed, once you're in that group, you can refine it even more fully. So you saw that in that group there were over 400,000 members. You can then, for example, just go in and search for CIOs, for example, Chief Information Officers, and you will then be delivered a list of those people straight out of the bat who are on profile for you, and you can communicate with them simply by sending that or clicking that send message. Furthermore, when you're in there, you can start to filter by a whole range of ways. Now, for instance, when we went back into advanced search, one of the things that you can filter by is groups. So check that out, and you don't have to be a premium service to do that either. So it gives you the ability to build 100% on-message prospect list. One other thing, and this is perhaps a bonus tip within this tip, is being able to tag people. So if you haven't discovered this already, when you go into somebody's personal profile, you can see that there's two tabs, one called relationship and one called contact info. And if you can't see those and you've got a little star, click on the star and then these will pop up. There's two things you can do. You can make copious notes about when you met them or how you've connected to them, maybe who's introduced them. You can even put reminders on there, so it's like a mini CRM system. But here's the good thing. You can then tag them. That's this note here, which is like segmenting, and you have unlimited tags. So for instance, if I met an accountant at a Chamber of Commerce event and he was particularly interested in, I don't know, engineering, I could create a couple of tags. One might be engineering, and the other one might be the fact that I'd met him at a Chamber of Commerce event. Then later on, I can go back and filter all my contacts by Chamber of Commerce event, and we know that we can communicate with them in common ground. So tags are a very useful way of connecting and filtering for the future. And the way you get back to those tags, let me just slip out of this for a second, just in case you've not found them yet. So if I go back to my contacts here, once you have automatically tagged a number of people, you'll see here it says filter by, and one of the drop downs when you come to filter by is tags. And if you hover over tags, then you get a whole range of these, and these are all the ones that you will have created yourself. So for instance, there's a whole bunch of people I met there at a rugby business networking event in Bristol. If I click on that tag, it automatically brings up that list. So all these people here I recently met at the Rugby Business Network in Bristol. So they are going to have common ideas, and we have something in common to talk about. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, moving on swiftly, we have social leveraging. So this is the sphere of influence. How do we leverage that? If there's one section that you're going to want to rinse and repeat and learn in depth, it's this one. The reason I say that is, of the thousands of salespeople we've trained, 50% of every net new meeting ever booked has come from this particular module, because it's a very simple concept and yet frequently neglected. We'll talk about how our curriculum has developed later through crowdsourcing via all the social selling trainers experience, but let's take a look at this simple concept right now. Okay, this is an existing client of ours, Vision Critical. If I were to tell you that we've done X, Y, and Z social selling with Vision Critical, and here are the results, then bluntly, if you've never heard of Vision Critical, that won't necessarily chime with you. It won't necessarily persuade you. So the only people that really care about Vision Critical's story are their current employees, their past employees, competitors perhaps, people that sell into the same market, their vendors, partners, and clients. So if I'm selling this story to anybody else, they just don't care. But if I'm selling it to those group of people who are, if you like, socially surrounding Vision Critical, then they are really going to be influenced because they're part of the same sphere. Now, there used to be an Insights button up here, as you can see, but that recently disappeared, ironically. However, don't worry about it. There is another way of getting to this vital information. If you look down on the right-hand side on a company page, within, for instance, Vision Critical, you will see this section that says people also viewed. And under Vision Critical, there's companies like Brainjuicer, Balls and Partners, Harris Interactive, Ipsos, all of these. What do I want you to do? I want to jump into the Brainjuicer site, and I want to dive into their employees, and I want to be able to tell those employees of the success story within Vision Critical. So people like John, the CEO, or Susan, the Chief Marketing Officer. These are people that would absolutely care about that story. And guess what? When you're done looking at that company, there's any number of companies like Flamingo who have dealt with not just Brainjuicer, but Vision Critical, and they're part of that overall sphere of influence. What you're trying to do is build a circle of companies that would actually care about your client's success story. So let's talk about what that means in real life. Talking about that Vision Critical story, and if you start road mapping this out to other market research companies, because that's what Vision Critical do, there's a company out of Los Angeles called USAMP, and there's a company out of Toronto called HotSpecs. And this is just a real-life case study that makes sense. This was a real LinkedIn message that we sent about 14 months ago, sending it to the VP of Sales, talking to him about this. He was just about to have a sales kickoff for 2013. So we shared with him the results of what happened with Vision Critical's 17 inside sales reps, and the fact that they all hit 100% of plan just using social selling. And we included a hyperlink after that story. Well, this is the response we got from him. And his response started off with, "You had me at Vision Critical." Because I'm telling the story to somebody that wins and loses deals every day to Vision Critical. So this was a competitor of Vision Critical, but he really cared about what they were doing for obvious reasons. Going forward with that, what we did is we took that story and we turned it into a blog post, and we shopped that blog, that article, we sent it to decision makers via LinkedIn that would care about the story, which is Kevin here at USAMP, the VP of Inside Sales. He booked a meeting with us using TimeTrade, and in fact, they are one of our corporate references now. So the concept here is that the corporate page of your clients really is a source of some fantastic and valuable insight, and that's just one of them. Of course, the decision makers at one of their competitors would be very interested to know what the sales department is doing. Same goes for the IT and operations teams or finance. So that Exo story won us Tata, one of the largest companies, communications companies in India. And it got us level 3 Comcast, who is a massive communications company in Canada. So that's all from just one organizational story. Now remember, we just learned to do an advanced search. So here it is again. I'm going to reiterate the point here because it's so powerful. One of the best places to search for new prospects are people that used to work with your existing clients. This is LinkedIn's exact internal secret. This is what they use when they sold their Team Link and their Sales Navigator packages. They used this very technique. What they're doing is teaming up with people who actually use their products already, who have moved on to other companies. As we said earlier on, it's 6 times easier to sell into an existing client or an existing customer than it is gain a new one. So here's the tip. Here's a tip that's related to this. Decision makers work damn hard, and that's probably you, and that's probably me. So sometimes sending messages out Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, is not the best time. You can send out messages, LinkedIn updates on a Sunday night, and you will get a far better response than Monday to Friday. So don't take my word for it. Try it and see what happens. Okay, we've got a little bit of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a bonus tip here that's really about sharing content throughout the buying journey, because we talked earlier on about getting over that dead zone, and this is really one of the best ways of doing it. You need to start about thinking yourself as a brand. You are the brand. People buy from people they like, and people like people just like themselves, but they also like people that they know, like, and trust. So what you need to do is think about sharing content. Now, how do you go about doing that? Yes, you can write your own content, and we would certainly recommend having regular blog posts yourselves that speak to your prospects and speak to your clients. But actually, sharing other people's content has equal value. And in between your own blog posts, then this is the way you do it. You find something that is spot on, that is of interest to your prospect, to your client, and in the 12-week program, we'll show you some tools that you can do this in less than 5 or 10 minutes a day. This is not a many hours activity. And once you find that, mostly these days there are these simple share buttons. And if you click on the share on LinkedIn button, this is what you get. You have the ability to do a number of ways of sharing that content very quickly, straight from within LinkedIn. One is you can post an update that's shared directly with your first degree connections. Secondly, you can post it to groups, and you can join up to 50 groups. So think about that as being a tactical tool to get out to a wider audience. Use that selectively, because you don't want to be seen as a spammer by LinkedIn or anyone else. But if it's valuable insight targeted to individual groups, then it's going to have some massive value. And then you can actually send to individuals. So when we talked earlier on about building your target list in your prospect companies through following through related companies in your marketplace, that's where you can send individual messages. So you can share the article, but you can actually tell them specifically why you thought that might be of interest to them. So see what you're doing here? You're not sending them an email saying, come on guys, tell us whether you're going to buy or not, but you're sharing interesting, useful, relevant content that reinforces that you are the subject matter expert. It reinforces your authority, and keeps you in front of them, yes, but you're not a pest. You're somebody bringing valuable information. So that's how you get over the dead zone. You can quickly share content to be an influencer, because you're going to want to overcome this problem of the dead zone, that uncomfortable silence that's been happening where someone told you, I swear to God, I'm going to get back to you in the next week or 2 months, and they don't. And we've got tons of stories that old school reps are still doing that stuff. They are still chasing people down, being the pest, whereas a successful social seller is going to help the buyer take those last few yards by sharing regular, relevant, quality content. So successful stories, things like 5 things to think about when you're going into implementation. Success stories that are case studies that show how people who have used your type of solutions have got great results. That's not salesy, that's case studies. Now, when you do start sharing content, you may have come across this on the right-hand side of your homepage. If you scroll down, you can start to see what impact those updates are having. This is a relatively new feature within LinkedIn. So you can see who's viewed within your network, and you can actually see who's viewed outside of your network at 2nd and 3rd degree. You can easily see who's liked it and who's commented on it. So people who are already engaging with your content, they're more likely to be the people to do business with. And this is another way of getting to those. When you go to, for instance, if you're sharing something on a company page or indeed through your personal profile, if you click on top right where you see that little flag sign that says notifications, you can drill down and it brings directly to your attention people who have shared your stuff. So for instance here, John Hill has shared a recent update I did about around social selling on the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management. And I can say something like, John, I hope you enjoyed the article I shared on social. Are you still buying lists or using LinkedIn for social selling? Please feel free to use me as your resource for social selling. Cheers, Rob. So you've acknowledged the fact that they have engaged with your content and helped move them through the buying funnel. So if you're not already a believer, I've given you 4, not just 3, so hopefully I've given you some bonus tips there. Let me tell you a little bit more about some of the stuff we've been doing in the last couple of years. Oracle has taken our training program internally and they've rolled it out to 23,000 of their sales staff worldwide. And they've actually turned it into an e-program, an e-learning program internally. So as well as that, we've talked previously about EXO. 50% of their sales team booked a net new meeting within 5 days. And USAMP, their existing sales team booked 3.5 net new sales meetings per month per sales rep, just using these social selling techniques. And Vision Critical we've talked about quite a bit, but they had 31 meetings booked in 60 days, and they sell to some very big brands. So overall, hopefully that's given you a feel for success and an uplift. But I don't know about you, sometimes I like to A/B test stuff, and this is perhaps one of the best ways of comparing and contrasting. One of our clients, InContact, decided to do something a bit different. They're out of Utah, and what they did is they took their sales team into a room and they split them down the middle. And they said, half the room, you can't use social selling. We're not going to train you. The other half, we're going to take you through the full social selling training program, the full 12 weeks. And they monitored the sales performance over time in this proper A/B test. And those that went through the social selling program outperformed the old school sales team by 22%. Now, to me, that's return on investment. And that's really why we're investing so much time and effort in this program. But because the world moves so fast, if we just built a program today and then started delivering it, probably within 3 months it would be out of date. So what we've done is we've got a number of social selling experts throughout the world, and we crowdsource the system. That means as things on LinkedIn or Google Plus or the tools you can use like Hootsuite change, we feed all of that information in, we crowdsource all of that information back in and regularly update the content to make sure that the materials that you receive, whether it's in these webinars, whether it's in the other things you'll see in a second, are constantly updated. So what next? Well, WSI's Social Selling Mastery Certification Program is made up of a couple of core elements. First of all, it's instructor-led training. Every week we have webinars that deliver in bite-sized chunks information that layers on week after week, building a proficient sales system. And also, in addition to that, we have e-learning support in the form of a learning management system. Let me tell you a little bit more about that. So the 12-week program, it's trainer-led, fully supported by the LMS, the learning management system. And that learning management system allows you to do a bunch of things. It allows you to track what you've learned. It allows you to track what you've retained through tests. It allows you to track what you've put into practice in terms of the inputs, but equally important, and as a business owner myself, even more important, track what happens as a result. What are the outputs? What impact is it having on the sales performance, the turnover of my business? And here's just a few screenshots to show you what it looks like. It's very user-friendly. It looks up to date. For people who are used to using social media and the like, this will be easy for them to navigate around, as well as having videos and presentations and guides and assignments and quizzes. The system is easy to navigate. It's delivered in a weekly chunk basis. And the way that we do that is, yes, we have the webinar. As soon as the webinar is finished, that is recorded and uploaded to the system. So if you want to revisit it, say you're away for a week or you're on holiday, you can catch up the following week. But in addition to all of that, we chunk that up into smaller bite-sized chunks. So if there's only one part of the video you want to hone in on, you can do so. But in addition to that, as I showed you before, we've got the recorded presentations. We've got individual guides on how-tos. We've also got assignments. Now, this is putting it into practice. So everything that you've learned through the webinar, you then put into practice over the following week. So week 1 might be updating your profile. You need to make sure that you've done all of those things before you move on to week 2. And the quizzes are, they're not very, very difficult. They are multiple choice quizzes, but they are a test for yourself, or are you retaining that information? So here's an example of one of those multiple choice quizzes. They're fun, they're quick, but it's quite interesting just to test that you have been awake whilst throughout the webinar itself. In addition to that, the assignments are where you can upload screenshots or individual screen grabs of the homework assignments that you've done, because that is really starting to change the behaviors. If you don't do the homework, you won't change your behavior. It'll be just like every other bit of training, which most people implement 5% of. The purpose of this coaching, training, and mentoring program over 12 weeks, I've read before now that for something to be habit forming, you need to be doing it for at least 90 days. And that's partly why this program is around a 90-day structure. So here are the 12 modules at overview level. Week 1, we focus on building a buyer-centric social profile. So making sure that instead of being a CV online, it actually demonstrates what you do for your clients. What's the pain you solve? Week 2 is around mapping your buyer personas, having a clear vision of who it is that you are trying to connect with. I don't know about you, but satellite navigation in your car, it works best if you've got a destination programmed in. It's pretty useless without it. So likewise, week 3 onwards needs you to have a clear view of who are the customers that you're connecting with. Module 3, finding content that intrigues your buyer. That's about not only your own content, but also third-party content that is useful to share and knock your buyer off their status quo. So they start to understand that you are a subject matter expert who can help them. So module 3 is finding it. Number 4 is, okay, what do you do with it? How do you push that content out in such a way that you don't come across as being salesy, but a influencer? Module 5, campaigning and connecting with your buyers. Okay, in module 2, we mapped out who they are. In module 5, we find them and we start connecting with them in a way that allows us to influence them later. Module 6, what are those trigger events in your space? What are the things you need to do to set up those saved searches so that you get a regular weekly feed of hot prospects? Module 7 allows us to focus on the sphere of influence. So now you've started to connect with the right people, the right decision makers and the influencers. How do you, through them, extend your sphere of influence? Module 8, social selling routines, 30 to 60 minutes a day. You started to layer week 1 to 7, but by week 8, you need to start to work out daily routines that are repeatable, that start to bring real results. And then week 9 and week 10 are about using tools that will speed up that process, because it's only through weeks 1 to 8 that you work out exactly what you want to do when you want to do it. So then if you apply tools like Hootsuite, it allows you to work out how you can do those things much more quickly. So instead of spending 2 or 3 hours a day on this stuff, you can get it down to 30 to 60 minutes. 30 to 60 minutes of substitutional activity, because there's things out there you're doing right now which probably aren't delivering you the results you want. What we were trying to do here is hone a process that does exactly that, and you can stop doing the things that don't deliver and spend more time on the things that do. And hey, we're focusing on 30 to 60 minutes. If you're going to get a 22% uplift in your sales performance doing this stuff 30 to 60 minutes a day, you may well end up spending more time on this, because it's going to get you 30 or 40% increase in results. Module 11, because a lot of us have smartphones these days, what we'll do is take you through the LinkedIn app, which is fantastic, but there are some gotchas. We need to point out what not to do through the mobile app, because you don't want to make any mistakes, but also how you can improve, leverage, and make more efficient your daily processes, whether it's in the office or whether it's on a Sunday night when you're trying to talk to the CEO of that company you've been trying to get into for a long time. And then week 12 focuses on competitive and competitor intelligence. How do you use these tools, not just for saved searches, but beyond that, to start to, if you like, instead of driving on dipped headlights, where you're only looking at what's in front of you, you might be driving at 100 miles an hour with your lights on dip and doing very well because you're focused on the next 3 months, but what's coming up very quickly is a brick wall in the darkness. What we teach you to do through module 12 is to drive on main beam, so you can actually see that brick wall coming and avoid it, and hopefully get even quicker through the next bend. So that's what the modules are about, and that's how it builds. So what will be the end results of this? Well, I guess if we do all this right together, you'll open doors faster. You'll start to feel that you're in control of the buying process. You're not just trying to sell stuff. You are attracting people. You're using this and content marketing together to create a strategy of attraction. And in a way, you'll be making your competitors irrelevant, because when your prospects are doing their due diligence, it's you that's coming out top of their pile every time instead of the competitors. And it'll help you close deals that you never thought possible. And what does the training look like? Well, just to summarize, one module every week, 60 minutes in terms of a video conference call with a live instructor. And then you'll get socially selling certified within 3 months through the use of the learning management system together with the instructor-led training.
Subscribe to my blog at seoforsight.com.